Hello there, Eagles. You are flipping in fifth with me, Mrs. G. Today we're talking about topic 14, lesson 4. And today's learning target is, I can use information in a line plot to solve problems involving the data. Today's vocabulary word is range. That's the difference between the largest and the smallest points on a line plot. So for instance, our range here would be 3, which is the largest, down to 0, which is the smallest, right? So we would know that our range would be 3. So how can you use data to solve problems? Well, here we have a line plot that has to do with the rainfall in Costa Rica. So what can we tell about this? Well, we can find the number of days. Here, for instance, the number of days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days that this city got 1/4 inch of rain. So we can find the number of days for each amount of rain. What kinds of questions can we answer from the data in the line plot? Well, we could, if we wanted to, find the total amount of rain in this entire month. And that is what we're going to work on today. So again, we have our same line plot. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to make our data a little bit more readable by putting it into a frequency table. So here I've got 1/4, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, and 3/4. Why do you think I don't have 0 or 1/8 or 7/8 or 1 listed in my frequency table? Well, that's because it never happened. There are no X's on these days, so that's no reason to include it in the frequency table. So again, let's look at our range here. Our range would be between 1/4 and 3/4. So in order to find the range, we would do 3/4 minus 1/4, and that gives us 2/4, or if we simplified it, it would be 1/2. So our range here would be 1/2. So now we're going to add to our frequency table by adding the frequency on here. So how many days was the rainfall exactly 1/4 of an inch? So here it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1/4. So we put that there. So here it was 12 days at 3/8. Here it was 5 days at 1/2. Here it was 5 days at 5/8. And here it was 3 days at 3/4. Okay, so now if we wanted to find out what the total amount of rainfall was in the month, we couldn't just add these things up because it happens with this frequency. So what we have to do is we have to multiply. So 1/4 times 5, 3/8 times 12. So you would complete your frequency table by doing exactly what I said. So we would solve 1/4 times 5, which is 1 1/4. Then we're going to write it down here. Then we would do 3/8 times 12, and that equals 4 1/2. So we're going to add that down here. 1/2 times 5 equals 2 1/2. Write that down here. 5/8 times 5 equals 3 1/8. We'll write that down there. So what is our last one? 3/4 times 3, well, that equals 2 1/4. So now I want you to add up those numbers on the bottom. So you are adding all of those mixed numbers together. But what do you have to do in order to add those numbers together first? Every time, remember, when we are adding fractions or mixed numbers, you always have to have a what? A common denominator. So here, our common denominator would be 8. So let's go through and add it up this way. So it would be 8 because the 4 and the 2 all go into 8. So we know that that's going to be our common denominator. So here we would change the 4 into an 8. And whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So 4 times what is 8? 2. So we have to do the same thing up here. 1 times 2 is 2. And then we'll cross out that part of the fraction. We'll do the same thing here. 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. Cross out that fraction. 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. Cross out that fraction. Do we have to do anything here? No, we don't, because it's already 8s. But we do have to change this one. So 1/4 equals 2/8, and we'll cross out that fraction. So now we need to go through and add. So we know that our common denominator is 8, so we're going to add our fraction first. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. And we can't forget about this guy, 13. All right? So then we'll add our whole numbers. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 2 is 7, plus 3 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So 12 and 13/8. But what is wrong with this number? Well, this is an improper fraction. So what we have to do is we have to subtract 8/8 from the fraction and add one whole over here. So 13/8 minus 8/8 equals 5/8. And then we have to add one to our whole, so 13 and 5/8. So that's how much rainfall they got in the month in Costa Rica. Okay, now it's your turn to try. All of tonight's questions are based off of this line plot. So the first question is, what is the range for the data? And if you forgot what range is, then go back and look it up. Write and solve an equation to find the total distance for all 20 flights. So you're going to be doing the frequency table like we just did and then adding all of those mixed numbers together. Question number 3 says, is 32 1/2 an outlier? I'm sorry, it should say, oh yeah, 32 1/2 right here, this column. Are these an outlier? Why or why not? And number 4, if the x at 36 3/4 here was gone, what would the range be? All right, go ahead and pause the video, answer these questions, go back in the video if you forgot how to do it, rewatch it, and then answer the questions and come back when you're ready for the answers. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the answer to number 1 is 4.5 feet. The answer to number 2 is right here. It equals 686 1/4 feet. You don't need to worry about the D if you didn't have that, but you do have to have all of this up here. Number 3, no, because there is more than one X here, so it would not be an outlier. If there was just one X, it would be an outlier. And number 4, the answer is 3 1/2 feet. Okay, make sure you checked your work and you wrote how many you got correct out of 4 this time. Remember, be honest, it's not for a grade. Honestly, fill out that self-reflection. Could you teach a friend, or are you still a little bit confused? And fill in the space for any questions you still have. Hope you had a great night, and I've enjoyed flipping in 5th with you. So we will see you for the next topic coming up later. Bye-bye.